Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 9 of the 2018 Tata Steel tournament. I'll show you the results of round 9 and the cross table and the pairings for round 10 at the end of the video. But first let's look at one of the games played by Maxim Matlakov. You see him here on the right in the picture, grandmaster from Russia, and the black player was Anish Giri. His mother is from Russia as well. His father is from Nepal, but he represents and lives in the Netherlands. Before the round, Giri was one of the 3 leaders together with Mamedyarov and Carlsen. Let's see how he got on in this game. White Matlakov, black Giri played on the 23rd of January. Knight f3 from Matlakov, d5 from Giri, g3, bishop g4, bishop g2, fianchettoing that bishop, c6, castles, knight d7, h3 kicking the bishop, bishop h5, d4, e6 and c4, bishop e7, knight c3. What opening do we have here? It has the pawn structure of a semi-Slav, but with black's light squared bishop outside of the pawn chain. Giri took on c4 and now Matlakov sacrifices a pawn with b3. Giri said afterwards, "He surprised me with this move, which is very unpleasant. I knew about this move in this position, but neglected it in my preparation. I was not prepared well enough." He took the pawn, queen takes, so white has sacrificed the pawn, and knight gf6 was played in the game Elyanov against So, but Giri played queen b6, also a logical move, offers a queen trade as he is a pawn up. Matlakov did not want to swap the queens, being a pawn down. Knight gf6, rook b1 attacking the queen, and if you now go to a6, then white will most likely swap the queens to shatter black's pawn structure. But Giri went back to c7 after rook b1. Bishop f4 from Matlakov, winning another tempo because it's attacking the queen, and queen went to c8. And now white has to show where his compensation is for the pawn. And in the live broadcast, women international master Fiona Stell Anthony said, "These are difficult positions. If I'm white, I'm unhappy because I'm a pawn down, and if I'm black, I tend to get crushed." Yes, that is not great. Matlakov could have played queen b3 here, which according to Giri was the best move. He should have gone for this to try and win the pawn back on b7. Otherwise, black is just a pawn up without much compensation for white. If Matlakov had played queen b3, Giri was thinking about knight b6 or maybe b5. After knight b6 he was afraid of a4. So this is some real compensation for white. But after queen c8, Matlakov decided not to play his queen back to b3. He played rook f to c1. And that was a very bad move according to Anish Giri. And we'll see in a minute why it is indeed a very unfortunate square for that rook. Giri castled, and now did Matlakov play queen b3. Giri is now going to protect the b7 pawn in a tactical way instead of defending it passively, which is quite instructive. He plays bishop g6 first, hitting the rook on b1. And after that rook was played to b2, he played rook d8, putting that rook on the better square, because you cannot take on b7, because there is bishop a3, and that is one reason why the rook is bad on c1, skewering both rooks. So after rook d8, Matlakov could not take on b7. He played a4, and Giri played a5. And now black has this nice b4 square for a bishop or maybe for a knight later. There were also ideas with rook a7 to protect the pawn from the side. Knight d2 from Matlakov, good move. Giri said that he missed this move, which gives white some compensation for the pawn. Knight c4 will be coming, and Giri decided to repeat moves, or look for a move repetition anyway. He played knight h5, kicking the bishop off this nice diagonal. This is a very beautiful diagonal for the bishop. The bishop went back to e3, and Giri played his knight back to f6. And after bishop f4 we would have a move repetition and a draw. But Matlakov wanted more. He played knight c4. He's now covering the a3 square, so he can now take on b7 if black lets him. There won't be any bishop a3 moves. Giri said that he thought it was a bit risky for white to play like this, and he said he didn't want to calculate here, didn't want to calculate too many variations. He chose to play a line that looks very natural. He played knight d5. Matlakov took his pawn back on b7 and bishop b4, putting the bishop on that nice square where it cannot be kicked away by any pawns. The queen is now hanging on b7, so Matlakov took on c8, rook takes, and he played knight a2, attacking this very annoying bishop on b4. That was the right move. Knight takes d5 is not good, because c takes d5 improves black's pawn structure and opens up the c file. This is very good for black. Also, knight e4 is not good because of c5, and white's camp is somewhat uncoordinated. So knight a2 was played by Matlakov. Giri took the bishop, and you cannot take back with the knight because of bishop a3. That is still in the position if the knight goes from c4. So Matlakov took back with the pawn. c5 from Giri. The position may open up, and black has beautiful bishops, and especially this knight on a2 looks quite ridiculous, to use the term that Grandmaster Eric Hansen used in the live broadcast. Retreating the bishop instead is not good. For example, bishop f8 is not good, not because white can take on a5, because then there is bishop a3 again with the same skewer, but after bishop f8 white can play rook b7. Giri decided to play c5, good move. Now it's not good to take the bishop because of c takes b4. This knight is now pinned, and this rook cannot go to c2 because of this bishop, and knight d7 to b6 is coming. This all looks very bad for white. But what he could have played is rook d1. That's a good move, and it was found by Grandmaster Hansen in the studio. This is really a good option. It solves some technical problems for white. One idea is to take on b4, and after c takes b4, then this pawn on a5 would be hanging, and if instead black would take back with the a pawn, then this pawn would be very strong, supported by the bishop on g2. So rook d1 was a real option. But Matlakov, already under time pressure, didn't find the best move. He played knight d6, attacking the rook on c8, bishop a3 from Giri, and a pair of rooks was swapped. Knight takes, bishop takes, and now Matlakov played knight e7 check as an in-between move, king f8, and another in-between move, knight takes g6 check, taking back, and then he saves his rook, plays rook c2. Giri commented in his interview afterwards saying, "Once we got this opposite colored bishop position, I played quite well," and he does indeed. In this position, the bishop on b2 is much stronger than the knight, and black has prevented white to get a runaway pawn. This a pawn is now not a passed pawn. Also, white's pawn structure is worse than black's because of these pawns on e3 and e2. Bishop a3 was played by Giri, and now you can play rook c3. This variation was given in the live broadcast. Attacking the bishop is attacking the rook b3, rook b8, rook takes, knight takes, and what is very interesting here is that the knight is trapped on a2, and it's dominated by the bishop, and it will take white a long time to get his king to come to the rescue of the knight. This position is good for black. A few more moves. D takes c5, Knight a6, attacking the pawn on c5, c6, king e7, and as said, this is good for black. So Matlakov decided not to play rook c3, he played bishop c6, c takes d4, e takes d4, and rook c8. Anish Giri called this a nasty move in his interview afterwards, and he said it's much more tempting to do something else instead, but unfortunately he did not say what that something else then would be. So he played rook c8, and if you now play bishop e4 to deal with that pin over the c-file, protecting your rook, then rook takes, bishop b2, and black is better again with the bishop dominating that poor knight on a2. After rook c8, Matlakov played e3, king e7, and again you can try bishop e4, but Matlakov decided on king f1. Bishop d6, taking that beautiful bishop away from a3 where it was going to dominate the knight, and indeed Giri called this counterintuitive, but the idea was to switch to the h-file with rook h8 to attack white's weak pawns there. g4, that pawn on g3 was hanging, so Matlakov plays it to g4. Knight b6, attacking the a4 pawn, and if you now play bishop e4, then there is rook h8, and there's two pawns hanging, the h3 and a4 pawns are now hanging. This is good for black. What white should have tried here is either e4 or king f2, but Matlakov played a bad move. In very bad time trouble, he played rook c1. Bishop a3 came, rook c3 attacking the bishop, bishop b4, and now Matlakov took on b4. He could have played rook c2, but then there is knight d5, which then forever stops this bishop e4 idea to deal with the pressure on the c-file. You can also try rook c1, but then there is bishop d2, and you're going to lose this pawn on e3. So after bishop b4, as said, Matlakov decided to take that bishop, a takes, and rook c5, solving the problem of the pin of the bishop, because now the rook is protected on c5. Here Giri could have played king d6. It's a good move. The bishop is now hanging. Bishop b5, rook takes, d takes check, and king takes e5, and black has a very healthy extra pawn and is winning here. Instead of king d6, which was a good move, Giri decided to play an even better move. He played b3. a5 from Matlakov, it was the 39th move, he almost made the time control, but here comes the last move of the game. Knight d7, and Matlakov immediately resigned. Why did he resign? Well, black is attacking his rook, and if you run back with the rook to c1, then there is a nice move, rook takes c6, because after rook takes c6, b2, and white cannot stop the b-pawn queening. What also doesn't work is bishop takes d7, because again, rook takes c5, d takes c5, b2, you cannot stop the pawn. Good win from Giri. He was a bit lucky that Matlakov decided to be ambitious and did not take the move repetition that Giri put on the board, but still very well played from Anish Giri. On this picture you see him executing his last move, knight b6 to d7, after which Matlakov resigned. And this picture is from a few seconds later when both players shook hands, Matlakov resigned. The results from round 9, it's the first time that there were this many draws. Jones against Ho, Anand Carlsen, Soos Fiedler, Mamedyarov Kramnik, Karyakin, Wei Yi and Caruana Adiban all ended in draws. The only decisive result was the game we just saw between Matlakov and Giri. Because of all these draws, Anish Giri is now the sole leader in the 2018 Tata Steel Masters Group with 6.5 out of 9, plus 4, very impressive. Carlsen and Mamedyarov are half a point behind. Kramnik and So are half a point behind that. Anand and Karyakin are +1. Peter Svidler is the only player on 50%. Gawain Jones and Maxim Matlakov on -1. Wei is 3.5 points, as well as Fabiano Caruana. Adi Bannesen 2.5, and Ho Yifan got another half point today. She is now on 1.5 out of 9. In the 10th round, the Tata Steel Masters Group will go on tour again. They will play round 10 in the city of Groningen in the northeast of the country. In round 10 we'll see Ho against Adiban, Wei against Caruana, Giri Karyakin, Kramnik Matlakov, Svidler Mamedyarov, Carlsen So, and Jones against Anand. And I will be here after the round to tell you what happened. I got a few messages from viewers about the length of the videos on Chess to Impress. Normally I like to keep them between 10 and 15 minutes, but I know that in some of the rounds of Tata Steel I've gone over that. Some of them were close to 20 minutes. I will attach a little poll to this video to find out what you would like to see, what length of video is ideal for you, and then I will take that into account in the future. Hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment, and if you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media. You also might want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.